Hello, this is Scott, and this is session 2 or part 2 of my Aquaponics design series. Thank you for joining me. If you like this type of content, please click like and subscribe to really helps out the process. As I mentioned, this is the design series. I'm also working on the operations series and harvesting slash cooking series to go along with these. So in session 1, part 1, we talked about basic components of aquaponics system. In this one, I will go into more detail on layout options, and there's no right answer or no perfect answer. It's the same for everybody. Depending what you're trying to do, what your layout will drive uh, different designs on how to do it. There's things like um, the bed sizing and spacing you need to think about, the height of your beds and tanks, how you access it. I've made several mistakes here on my system, which I'll show you later, on lack of access. You need to think about weight and support. You want to make sure that everything is properly supported with steel or stone and concrete footers, so that when you get a big rainstorm, like we do once in a while here in Central Texas, your support doesn't wash away, then all of a sudden things are falling over. That'd be really bad. Now I'll talk about different materials like stone, mortar, concrete, wood, and then plastics like totes and window boxes. And there's no right answer or perfect answer for everybody. It really depends on your application. There are pluses and minuses to all those materials. So now we'll jump into some diagrams I drew, and I will talk to them on more detail on some design pointers I think would be helpful.
So here are two drawings with a bunch of notes for reference that I will walk through to talk about on design. So the major components, as we hit in the first video, were your fish pond, the sump, and the garden beds. Then in this diagram, I've added in streams for the return water from the beds and the pond back to the sump. The pond and sump you either want to be underneath a tree or some other type of shade, or add a trellis with a pretty high density, high blocking shade cloth on top of it. Beds, you want to be cognizant of don't go over 6 foot wide. You can go longer, but keep it down to 6 foot so that you can reach the plants that you want to harvest or plant in the bed, from either side. Spacing of the beds and the ponds, I would recommend 5 to 6 foot. This gives you good access, and I would do the same between beds. Keep it 5, 6 foot. And then around the outside, I would also make sure that you have a good, 3 foot access on all these sides, so that you can get at everything to clean and harvest and plant. Just a good rule of thumb. The trellises on the beds, I have used 3/4 inch galvanized tubing. You could also do the same with the 2x2 cedar. I think the galvanized tube will last a little longer and it's less visually impacting. That's why I went with it. And then I've wrapped it with 2x4 galvanized wire mesh fencing. And if where I want access to a plant, I've just snipped out a couple sections so I can get my hand through it. Um, The other thing that I've recently started adding are these trellises between the beds, and this I've put up higher so that you can walk under them, but this gives a place for vining plants to keep growing instead of just wrapping them on the bed, and that allows for better airflow, which in turn helps reduce fungal issues that you'll find on your leaves. Going to the other view here, again, your pond, sump, bed, stream. Here's an arbor that I like to put over the ponds. Again, if you're under trees, you probably don't need this, other than it might be nice to keep leaves, reduce the leaves in your pond. and then 6 or 7 foot arbor above the walkways. The beds, 12 to 16 inches enough. If you go above that, you're going to end up with dead zones in the bottom. The roots probably will not grow down that far, and stuff just collects in it. So there's no real advantage going above the 16 inches. The trellis, 2 to 3 foot, is good. If you think about a 1 foot high bed, 3 foot high um, trellis, now you're at 4 feet. And then this bed, you want it to be, probably about a foot off the ground. And so, total you're at 5 foot. So that's easily reachable to harvest your fruit. The 12-inch here is for uh, the bell siphon. So you want to make sure there's an air gap between the output of your bell siphon and the stream bud so that it'll break the siphon at the end of the drain cycle. The stream, you don't have to do a stream. You can use buried pipe, but I like stream just so you can see what's going on. And the fish will tend to, any fish you have in the sump here will swim up in the stream. So it's kind of fun to watch them. And the output of the radial flow filter will create a waterfall effect, and you'll get bubbling from the siphon that these will agitate the water and help oxygenate it. There's some general guidelines on sizing your system that I've incorporated in this diagram for easy reference. You're going to want 5 to 10 gallons of water per pound of fish. You're going to want your bed to be about twice the bed volume to be about twice the size of the pond volume, and then the sump to be 50 to 100% of the bed volume. Your sump, you need to think about the water that's in this bed will occupy maybe about 40% of the volume. The rest is the media. So as these beds fill, that water comes out of the sump. When they do a drain cycle, that water goes back to the sump. So the sump needs to be big enough to handle both those extremes, and that's where these numbers come from. And I ran through an example here that kind of gives you a sizing guideline. Walking from basically the amount of pond size I wanted to do, and then how many fish that'll support, how much bed volume. This I showed as 6 by 20. That could be 6 by 10 and a half by 2 beds. You could add 2 of those, or it could be 5 foot beds and 4 of them. Sump, typically you do one sump, but the sump needs, as I mentioned before, needs to be appropriately sized to handle the full and empty garden beds. As materials, I did a lot of masonry for anything that's got, most anything's got water in it is masonry, as in ponds and sumps. I did do 1 or 2 beds out of stone as well. Then I've done some beds out of wood that I have cedar 2x6s that I have coated with liquid rubber pond, the EDPM, not the, you can't use the roofing slash wall stuff. It has to be the pond. It'll say pond on it. And, it takes a bunch of coats, but that does work. And you're going to want to use the fabric with it to seal across all the joints. And if this bed is a wood bed, either you need to support it up on stones or heavy steel. I used angle, I think weathering steel, 2x2, I believe, weathering steel frame that I put a couple of my beds. And I've also done some just up on spaced out with stones. What else? Oh, the other thing you can build your ponds and beds out of are plastic totes, plastic tubs. The advantage of that is much cheaper and it's easier to modify, but it's not as ornamental as stone or stained wood. This sump could also be built out of, you could dig a hole and put a standard pond liner on these, and that can work as well. I think the seams are a little more clicky, but certainly you could do that. And the beds could also be built with plastic totes, or you could work with, and typically if you do the plastic totes, the designs I've seen, will take a 300-gallon tote, chop off the top uh, third of the tote, so about 12, 15 inches. And then the bottom of that tote they use for the pond, and then the top, flipped upside down becomes the bed. Other thing you can play around with are, I think you could do this with, say, a kiddie pool would work, or the window boxes. There's really anything that you can seal up fairly easily, and it's about 12 to 16 inches in depth, would work for a garden bed. It certainly has to be structurally strong enough to hold either the aerated clay balls or gravel, and you need to support it properly, but this doesn't necessarily have to be wood or masonry. It could be a plastic. And the advantage of going with plastic over the wood or masonry is now you have something that you can relocate to another property or somewhere else in your yard if you change your mind and how you're setting it up. Where my stone and concrete, I'm kind of stuck. It's not something that I'm going to move or be able to relocate. So trade-offs and everything. And now we'll run outside and I'll show you, uh, walk you around my system, and we can talk about some of these concepts again and show you things that I like and things that I don't like, that I would recommend avoiding. So I'm going to do a quick walk around the system, and I can highlight some things that I like and dislike. This is one of the most recent beds I added. It's supported on angle steel framing. I actually wrapped in some wood to pretty it up, and buried in concrete. And this was because I wanted to push the bed high enough that it could drain into this pond. The water comes out of this pond and back into that pond. The sump, this is actually done in gunite along with a lot of the beds. This is the low point of the system. And all these things you can see, everything I've done is almost entirely masonry and wood. These beds over here, you can see this is also built with the Western cedar. I think I sourced it out of Lowe's, but I'm sure you can find it other places. And this one I designed it with just masonry blocks. Framing, there's an extra wood frame underneath it, but it was just up on blocks. And if you can see it, if I'm hitting you the right angle, you can see all that. Yeah, masonry blocks. One thing I do like on the system is the streams I've added in. You can hear the water flow. Water flow is always good because you aerate. Adding agitation will help aerate the water, which is good for the fish and the plants. This particular bed here, it's currently filling. You can see it bubbling there. This one is actually done properly, along with the other masonry bed and two of the wood beds that the siphon works. Right now it's filling, so it's not doing a draining cycle. This bed I put on top of a pond, which is nice for the shade. Unfortunately, it does make it hard to do service work on the pond underneath, so I'm not sure I would do that again, though it's kind of a cool concept. The fish like it. This is another masonry bed. Most of these masonry beds, other than the last two, struggle with draining properly, so I've had to take the bell siphons out and just run them open loop. So dump a bunch of water in, and the drain just lets it drain out. No bell siphon really. That particular one has a good bell siphon on it that works properly. That's all masonry. And this fish tank is all masonry. I did not put a good solid lift filter on it, so there is a tube that's running on the bottom that went to another pipe that I decided not to use for something else, and so that's what's feeding that radial flow filter there. On trellises, these are all 3/4 inch galvanized tubing, and I've wrapped it with the mesh fence, 2x4 inch 14 gauge fence, and I'll just cut snip one of the wires from the mesh and use it to bend around to hold the mesh to the framing. I've done that, you can see all over the place. And the other thing I've added recently that I think I'm really going to like are these trellises above the walkways. So this gives some more room for the vining plants. Like this is a opa squash or gourd. Basically use it like zucchini. Gives them a place to run instead of like what I've done with the tromponcino over here. That guy is everything. I've kept wrapping it around the bed. I eventually did add these more trellises from the grow on, but they've been growing wrapped around it, and so now I have air, like the okra inside is hard to get at, and there's not good airflow in there, which is I'm going to start getting fungus issues with that. So I do like doing these the trellises. I think I'm going to be adding more of those in the future. I'll probably overdo it, and so then I can't get at things. As you add these trellises, then of course they add shade, which is nice. Like right where I'm standing is nice and shaded, but this also is blocking sun that would get to plants in other beds, so nothing's for free. Other stuff. Oh, so little bridge there. Those are kind of nice and ornamental and actually functional. This stream bed in the back here was the idea was for, and I've added the pond, the dams in it to build small ponds, and this is a place for the amphibians like frogs and toads to lay eggs and breed. The other thing that really likes it and probably is dominating it is the dragonflies. The dragonfly nymphs will spend a big portion of their life, more than when they're actually dragonflies, growing in this. And consequently, they've probably hammered the tadpoles pretty heavy. The nymphs are voracious eaters of any kind of course, mosquito larvae, other bugs, but they also eat tadpoles. I'm still getting some frogs and toads out of it, but certainly they are, the nymphs are definitely the dominant player in there. Bad things, as you can see back here, don't have nearly enough space from the bed to the fence. Ideally, I should have another 2 foot so it'd make it easier to walk around and do service work. And now when I have to stand in the pond, or if you get over on the back side of here, all these vegetables are hard to get at. So I'm going to have to walk on the wall to even gain access. And the same with the sump. I built it right up against the fence. So now if I want to work on plumbing around the backside for a hot water loop, I'm basically straddling the water, or putting on boots and standing in the pond. It's not insurmountable, but doing it again, I think I would have given myself more access. Thank you for watching this video. Please click the like and subscribe button. Subscribing really helps us produce more videos and content for you in the future.